Ever stand in line at the pharmacy, kind of impatient, just waiting for your
Oh,
prescription?
yeah, we've all been there.
It's like that moment you walk out, you can almost breathe again,
Right?
right?
Like a weight off your
They've
shoulder.
got your meds.
Exactly.
But we rarely stop to think about the journey those pills or those injections, whatever it is,
Yeah,
took to actually get there. And
absolutely.
that's where import-export specialists come in.
Right.
So we've got a stack of interesting stuff to dig into today, especially this RoleCatcher career guide.
It's a good one.
Seems like you're really interested in the nitty-gritty of this job, the skills you need, the kind of roadblocks you might hit.
Yeah, the impact it has, the whole 9 yards.
So let's dive right in.
Yeah.
What's it really like working in this world?
Well, it's easy to forget, right? I mean, we see these pharmaceuticals,
Right.
like just products on a shelf, right?
Right.
Like any other product.
Yeah, right.
But there's a whole, almost a hidden world behind each one.
Like a global operation.
Exactly, a global supply chain, and the stakes are incredibly high.
And RoleCatcher, they really get into that. They don't sugarcoat it at all. Their guide starts right off with how vital customs clearance is.
Which is way more than just, stamping some forms and waving a shipment through. It's a lot more intense than people realize.
Oh, I bet.
Think about it. You've got, say, a huge shipment of insulin coming in from Europe.
Okay.
Every vial, every single one, needs to be documented perfectly, categorized right, using those specific international codes.
Wow, so detail-oriented.
It's intense. And then you've got to get it cleared by customs.
Right.
And all of this while you're also making sure that the temperature is perfect, to keep everything stable and effective.
Oh, gosh, the pressure.
One little mistake could snowball into a crisis. People who need that medication might not get it.
That's a huge responsibility. You'd really have to be on top of things, detail-oriented, like you said.
Absolutely. It's almost like being a detective, You're meticulously going over every document, every regulation, every single step of the way, and you can't miss a thing.
So it's not just about knowing the rules, but also, like, sniffing out potential problems before they happen.
Exactly. You've got to be proactive.
Yeah.
And to do that well, you need a really unique blend of skills.
What kind of skills are we talking about?
Well, you need legal knowledge to understand all those international trade regulations. Then you need that geographical awareness to understand shipping routes. The best way to get something from point A to point B efficiently and safely.
Makes sense.
But then you also need cultural sensitivity because you're working with people from all over the world. Suppliers, officials, you name it.
It's interesting because RoleCatcher, they really highlight how this career is about hard skills, A&D, soft skills.
Yeah.
They even mention active listening and problem solving as must-haves.
Oh, absolutely. This is not a job for someone who wants to just put their head down and work alone in a cubicle.
But definitely not.
It's about building relationships, understanding what everyone needs, and finding solutions that keep those shipments moving.
It's like you're the conductor of an orchestra, making sure all the parts work together.
Exactly.
It's pretty amazing how many different skills you need for this job. It's not just boxes and shipping labels like some people might think.
Not at all. It's really a global job. You've got to be on top of international law, how trade works on a massive scale, even cultural differences, like you were saying.
Yeah, and it sounds like this is a field that just keeps changing. RoleCatcher, actually, they talk about how important it is to keep learning new things, to keep up with the industry.
And they're right. Things are always evolving. New regulations, new technology, you name it. Standing still is not an option in this line of work.
They even have a section in the guide about certifications you can get. They specifically mentioned the CITP and CCS. Do those ring a bell?
They do. Those are big ones in the import-export world. The CITP, that stands for Certified International Trade Professional. Having that on your resume, it shows you really know your stuff when it comes to global trade.
So it's like a stamp of approval, shows you're at the top of your game.
Exactly. And then there's the CCS, Certified Customs Specialist. That one's getting more and more important these days because, well, automation is changing how customs works.
Oh, right, because technology is playing a bigger role in everything. Even RoleCatcher talks about how AI is being used now, like to help people find jobs.
Yeah.
And they have that incredible tool. I think it was over 100,000 potential interview questions.
Yeah, it's wild. Over 120,000 to be exact. It's mind-blowing how much data they've compiled. And they even have this AI-powered thing that analyzes your CV, tells you what to improve.
Whoa, seriously?
Seriously. And that's not just some gimmick. It's part of a much bigger shift. AI is changing the game when it comes to finding a job. Pretty much any job, but especially in import-export.
Makes you wonder, though, right? If AI can scan your resume and even predict interview questions, what does that mean for like how we actually get those skills in the first place? Does it all come down to being able to learn new things fast and being adaptable?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, I think RoleCatcher might be onto something with this. They're not just giving you the info you need right now, they're giving you the tools to stay ahead of the curve, especially with technology and globalization moving so fast.
So they're not just playing catch up, they're trying to anticipate the future.
Exactly. They're preparing people for a future where the only constant is change, and honestly, that's a good thing.
It's definitely food for thought. But let's talk about that future a bit. RoleCatcher, they laid out a pretty clear path for how your career can grow in this field. They talked about starting out by like assisting with documentation, maybe focusing on one specific region or even just one type of product.
Yeah, like an entry-level position, you're learning the ropes, getting familiar with the processes. But as you gain experience, you can take on more responsibility. You might manage bigger projects, negotiate deals with international partners.
Right, like work your way up.
Exactly. And eventually you might even lead global trade compliance initiatives for your whole company. It's pretty high-level stuff.
Wow. So there's definitely room to grow. I'm actually looking at one of the example career profiles from the guide. It's for a senior import-export specialist. And this person, get this, they implemented a whole new risk management system.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
And they saved their company millions of dollars in potential fines just by like anticipating problems before they happen. So, like, talk about impact. It's amazing, isn't it? You don't always think about the people behind the scenes, but they're making a real difference, a life or death difference sometimes.
No doubt about it. It's not just pushing papers. It's about making sure those life-saving medications get where they need to be, no matter what.
Exactly. And it sounds like the higher up you go in this field, the more important it is to be a strategic thinker, a problem solver, even a bit of a diplomat sometimes, right?
You got it. Those senior-level specialists, they're navigating a complex world dealing with regulations, logistics, international relations, all while keeping their eye on the big picture, making sure patients have access to the medications they need.
And RoleCatcher really stressed that continuous learning thing, right? Like it's not enough to just have the skills you start with. You got to keep adding to your toolkit.
It's so true. Think of it like, building up your expertise. You start with the basics, the foundation,
Hmm.
regulations, documentation, all that good stuff. But as you gain experience, you start adding those specialized skills, right? Like maybe you become an expert in a particular region's trade laws, or maybe you really understand the ins and outs of a specific type of pharmaceutical product.
So it's like the more you know, the more valuable you become, especially in a global field like this.
Precisely. And with technology changing so rapidly, those specialized skills might need to include things we haven't even thought of yet. Data analysis, AI literacy, maybe even coding, who knows?
It's wild to think about. So we're not just talking about keeping up with the times. It's almost like you have to be ahead of the curve, thinking about what skills you'll need 5, 10 years down the line.
And that takes us back to that thought-provoking question RoleCatcher asked, right? If AI is changing how we even get hired, shouldn't it also change how we prepare for our careers from the very beginning? It's not just about what you study in school anymore. It's about being a lifelong learner, always adapting, always growing.
It's a whole new world out there, and honestly, it's a little bit exciting. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We talked about the complex journey of those little pills in our medicine cabinets, a journey orchestrated by these often unseen import-export specialists. They're the ones ensuring those life-saving medications make it through a maze of regulations, logistics, and global partnerships, all while navigating a world that's constantly changing.
And they're doing it with meticulous attention to detail, a thirst for knowledge, and a deep understanding of how interconnected our world really is. It's a career that's both demanding and incredibly impactful.
Because at the end of the day, it's about people, right? It's about making sure that everyone, no matter where they are in the world, has access to the medications they need to live healthy lives.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
It does. And it just goes to show sometimes the most important journeys are the ones we never even see.